Salutations. It is another Wednesday, and you know what that means. It is time for the Life in the Movies podcast. I am one of your co hosts. My name is Ryan Cam. Thank you all so much for joining. And today, Jacob and I are going to be going in deep on a little independent movie called The Batman. It definitely did not make almost $130 million at the box office, so hopefully this brings some light onto a criminally underseen movie. We're going to be talking what we liked, possibly what we didn't like, some things that maybe we thought were underrated, maybe some things people are maybe not noticing, and what's the future of the Batman, considering, no, I can't keep the ruse up. The movie cleaned up, but we're going to be talking about all things Batman in this episode. But first, I got to introduce my main man, my co-host, Jacob Martin. Jacob, how you doing?
I am doing great. As I already mentioned before we started filming the podcast, I woke up at the day of filming this video. I had a very bad headache. Where I live, especially in the springtime, the pollen is so terrible, and the weather changes quite a bit from rainy to very sunny, to very windy and all that. And I'm like, it messes up my sinuses so bad that sometimes I can't even think straight. So thankfully, I'm much better now that we're recording, and I'm excited to talk about a very exciting movie with the Batman. Ryan, I hope you're doing okay too.
Yes, I'm doing very well, and you should come to Florida sometime. Our weather is bipolar. Like literally today, we're filming this on Monday night. I had the day off from work, so I went on a bit of a bike ride just because I'm training for another 5K, and so this is helping me with my endurance. And started out riding. It's a beautiful sunny day. When I was on my way back to the house, it started raining for about 2 minutes, and then the rain stopped and it was back to sunny again. I'm like, seriously? So that's all we're getting? So yeah, the Florida weather is just it's like it's hot, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold. Oh, it's sunny, now it's rainy. There's not a cloud in the sky, now it's all the clouds. So it's craziness.
Yeah, that's a lot. And even, I mean, I guess we kind of had that today here where I am in Virginia. Like, I woke up and it was really sunny, and then when I got off work today, it was cloudy, and then we had a little bit of rain, and then when I got home, we had this really big downpour, and it only lasted like 5 seconds, and now it's just wind. So, and that doesn't really help my head out either, because you got all these different precipitations and weather patterns, and mixed with the pollen, it can be a nightmare sometimes.
Yeah, the pollen is especially bad for me. I've been grateful enough to have never had COVID, not the mainline one, not Delta, and not Omicron, but I've gotten 3 separate bouts of allergies. So it's like I'm Neo from the Matrix when it comes to COVID, but when it comes to my allergies, I'm like Harry or Marv from Home Alone, just stepping on all the on all the Christmas ornaments, falling into all the mud. It just, I can't escape it no matter what I do.
Yeah, it's really rough having all those allergies. It's so
Well,
rough.
well, anyway, like I said, this episode is going to be all about a discussion on The Batman, the new Matt Reeves movie. And despite all of my joking earlier, this movie is cleaning up. As we are recording this, it was reported that it made just under $130 million, which, considering that COVID is still having somewhat of an effect on theaters, that is amazing, considering everything that is going on. People are still going out of their way to see this. And this is going to contain a spoiler-free section and a spoiler-filled section. We will give plenty of warning before we go into spoilers, because people don't give warnings, and that's just incredibly inconsiderate. So if you want to stay for the spoiler-free part and maybe leave in case you haven't seen the movie, I highly recommend that. Or if you have seen it, stay around for the whole thing. That's fine by us. But let's dig into the spoiler-free portion. I think general thoughts. I have an entire review for this on the channel right now if you'd like to check that out, and I'll talk about my abridged thoughts, but I'll turn it over to Jacob to talk about what he thought. So, Jacob, what did you like? What did you think of the Batman?
The Batman, I thought, was an excellent movie. It had so many unique aspects that I had never seen in a Batman movie before. I mean, other Batman movies did a little bit of looking into the detective side of Batman, but Matt Reeves' film fully embraced it. And I thought that was a cool way of making it stand apart from, let's say, the Christopher Nolan films or the Tim Burton films. I thought Robert Pattinson was excellent as Batman. He is now one of my favorite Batmans, up with Christian Bale. I like that this is a much more brooding Batman. We get to see the more vengeful side of the character, and he can get very unhinged, and I really respect that. I love the mystery angle of the movie. All the performances in this movie stood out, especially our villains, whether Paul Dano is the Riddler, who I thought was absolutely terrifying in the role. Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman had some great scenes. I loved the very unrecognizable Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Like, if you had told me that was Colin Farrell, I wouldn't have believed you, but he was great in this movie. Even though Michael Caine was very, no, not Michael Caine, even though Andy Serkis, corrected myself, was limited as Alfred, he still was good in the role. I wish we got more of him, but he was still good in the role. I especially loved Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon, and I like that this movie you really get to see the friendship between Gordon and Batman, which we haven't really seen in any of the previous Batman films. I will admit I did feel the 3-hour runtime at times. I don't think this movie is as well paced compared to other Batman films, especially compared to the Nolan trilogy. But it's still well worth your time. It's got a great detective mystery. I love the dark layers of the story and the twists and turns along the way. The action that we do have is fantastic. And this will definitely go down as one of the best Batman movies we've ever gotten. Ryan?
Yeah, and I've only seen this movie once. I saw it on Friday, on technically Friday morning, and it was afternoon by the time it got out. But I've had an incredibly busy weekend going to Orlando with some friends. I'm only able to see it once. However, when I saw it the one time, I was I was very impressed by the quality on screen. I had no doubt that Matt Reeves would deliver. I mean, pretty much every movie that he has directed has been solid. I have not seen Let Me In, though I've heard good things, but Cloverfield is awesome. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is awesome. War for the Planet of the Apes is arguably even better than Dawn. I mean, the dude has gone from strength to strength. So when I heard that he was directing this, I was like, you don't have to tell me anymore. I'm sold. Robert Pattinson more than carried as Batman. Like, pretty much whoever cast this movie deserved a raise, because the cast in this movie was just entirely awesome. Andy Serkis was great, like Jacob, like you mentioned. Like, there's a part of me that always forgets that, like, he's a real human being, because we see him under mocap so much, at like Gollum and Snoke and Caesar. It's like it's like I forget whenever I see Andy Serkis to be like, who's this random British dude? Oh, that's Andy Serkis. It's just, I have to correct myself. But Colin Farrell is unrecognizable as the Penguin. Like, seriously, looking at a picture of Colin Farrell and looking at Colin Farrell in this movie, it is so just mind-meltingly bizarre. Like, the dude is unrecognizable, and he honestly played the Penguin how I like my Penguin to be. I was not a big fan of the Danny DeVito Penguin. I liked aspects of him, but I thought he was a little too savage. I prefer the Penguin to be more of a gentleman, despite being in a very barbaric profession. And this Penguin had a bit more of a harder edge to it than, like, say, the Penguin in Batman the Animated Series, for example. But I could tell that he was more of a businessman than like a deformed monster. I liked that. I liked the spirit of that. Like you mentioned, Jeffrey Wright was awesome as Commissioner Gordon. I hope he comes back in that role, because he absolutely crushed it. Really, there is so much to like about this. The movie is very long. It's with the 25 minutes of trailers, it is a 3.5 hour experience, like 3 hours and 25 minutes. So definitely be prepared if you have not seen the movie as of yet. It is definitely a substantial time investment. And I said in my review that you definitely feel the 3 hours. However, there's not really anything that I would trim. I think there's some story elements that I would question why they're there, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense why it is. So it's a bit of a weird paradox, but I think the 3 hours was used very well. And some of the story elements, and we'll get into this in the spoiler section, some of them I just still don't know how to feel about. I feel like they were wanting to go in one direction, they got cold feet, and so they either minimized it or completely forgot about it. And that'll definitely be something I bring up. But I think this movie is being a tad overhyped because I've seen the love for this movie just all throughout this past weekend. It's like, this is the greatest comic book movie ever. And I get it, but I also sort of don't. I think I'll have to marinate on it. But I said on my Twitter that this is a movie I feel like I've seen once and I can comfortably not see again for a really long time. I said on there never again. I think I would walk that back slightly and say I think I would like to see it again maybe one day, but I think I've seen enough for right now. But I am very excited that if they do make another one of these, because the movie did make $130 million opening weekend, so it is looking like that there's going to be another one with Reeves at the helm. So I'm thinking, and especially with the tease at the end, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there, I feel like they're going to do a storyline from the comics that I'm really passionate about and excited about. So that I went on a bit of a tangent, but long story short, I did really enjoy this movie. There's a lot of quality. I don't think it's perfect, but the good is so good that it's like, here's the good and like, here's the bad. It's like far outweighs it. So I think the movie is just outstanding.
And Ryan, you touched on a really neat point about how some people were really hyping this movie up, that this is the greatest Batman movie ever, or the greatest comic book movie of all time. I've only seen this movie once myself, and I definitely respect the opinions of others and that the movie really, 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 really delivered for them. I think this is a great movie. I don't think it's my favorite Batman movie, though. I think the Dark Knight trilogy overall is still my favorite thing in the world of Batman. I respect a lot of great aspects of Matt Reeves' vision. I think Matt Reeves got the griminess of Gotham down so well. He made that place so nasty and so disgusting to live in. Like, it makes you question why anyone would want to live there. I love what he did with that.
Yeah,
But I feel like with yeah. Oh, what'd you say?
I was saying exactly, and while I while I just had this thought the entire time I was watching this, and there are a couple of scenes of the sun, but I was just thinking to myself, Gotham cannot buy a sunny day. It is either dark or just torrentially downpouring. It's like it's a perpetually rainy city. It just like just adding on to what you were talking about the griminess, because yeah, when I was watching this, I was thinking to myself, why do people live in this city? If it sucks so bad, is like why live there? And I've seen in reviews, I've seen some comparison to like modern day New York City. And to be fair, I have not been to New York City in many years. While I was there were some dirty parts to it, but overall, I didn't think it was that bad. But I think it was like modern day New York City turned up to like 20. That's the perspective I got.
Yeah. But I feel like the Dark Knight trilogy overall are movies that I'll go back to more compared to the Batman, because I think Nolan has a great understanding of how to structure and pace a movie, and all three of his Batman movies flies by and they're big adrenaline rushes. Like, look at The Dark Knight Rises, which is 15 minutes shorter than The Batman. I actually watched that movie like the night before I saw The Batman. And even with that extended runtime, it flew by. Like, there's no inch of screen time that I would trim out of that movie because it's that intense of a story. It's that fantastic of a character journey. And I love the action in that movie as well. And that movie just is very well paced for a movie with that excessive length. I feel like with the Batman, even though it's still a well structured movie, yes, and it's very well directed, and I love the performances, and I love almost everything about the movie. It did feel a bit excessively long at times. I feel like you could have trimmed like a half hour of fat in this movie, and I think it'd be a better paced film compared to the Dark Knight trilogy, where I wouldn't trim a thing in Nolan's films because he paces those movies incredibly well.
Yeah, even Batman Begins, which is told in a bit of a non-traditional format, there's still never a dull moment. You're either focusing on Bruce Wayne training with Ra's al Ghul, Bruce Wayne returning to Gotham and becoming the Batman for the first time, Ra's al Ghul making his moves into Batman, destroying Wayne Manor and all that, Commissioner Gordon coming onto Gotham PD and recognizing that everybody is pretty much on the take and like he is the only one like with his finger in the dike like that little Dutch boy. Like everything had a purpose. I feel like in the Batman, while everything did have a purpose, I feel like there was a little too much in there. I think if you cut out a certain plot line, and again I'll touch on this later, but I feel like if you like minimized certain things, I think it would have been a little more streamlined.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely so much to talk about in this movie that I'm excited to dive into. So, are you ready to go into the spoilers?
Yeah, we might as well, because I think, like I said, the one thing that I was like, I wish they wouldn't have touched on this is the only way I can talk about it is to spoil it. So let's go into spoilers. So, spoiler warning, if you have not seen The Batman, go watch it and then come back to this. We will be talking about pretty much the ending, character reveals, like everything, warts and all. So abandon ship now if you have not seen it. And we'll talk about spoilers starting in 3, 2, 1. So I think the biggest surprise to me, and the marketing actually never showed this person, but the biggest surprise to me was John Turturro as Carmine Falcone. When I saw him, I'm like, John Turturro, oh no. But he was actually one of the better parts of the movie, and I'm shocked that the marketing didn't like big up him more, but I'm kind of glad that they didn't.
Yeah, I definitely agree because John Turturro is a hit and miss actor for me. I've seen him do highly hilarious comedies like an Old Brother Where Art Thou, where he's great in that with George Clooney. And then you cast him as like the military guy in the Transformers movies, and he's absolutely cringe.
I am under the robot's genitalia.
Oh no, we're not going there. That's garbage. But he surprised me as Falcone because not only did he play a very grounded character, but to me, Falcone, and what Matt Reeves does brilliantly with this, he makes the character essentially the godfather of Gotham City, pretty much. He pretty much owns Gotham City with the back of his hands. He's paid off all the corrupt cops and lawmakers under his belt. And if you get in this guy's way, he will just mess you up, eat you up, and destroy you for life. He is a character that you do not want to mess with. And I definitely felt intimidated when watching his performance. And I was very, very, very much surprised by his performance. And he was one of my favorite aspects and one of the biggest surprises of the entire movie.
Absolutely. And I think for someone, because Carmine Falcone has been in Batman movies before, I remember Tom Wilkinson played him in Batman Begins, which,
Yeah.
I mean, he was fine in there. I mean, Tom Wilkinson's a good actor, but this is the best Carmine Falcone that we're probably ever going to get. Tuturo understood the assignment and knocked it out of the ballpark. And there's actually a good moment at the funeral scene where where Falcone and Bruce Wayne meet for the first time in a really long time, and Falcone is like, "I remember your father saved my life," and it's like, what? And it turns out this is actually a callback to the Batman comic, The Long Halloween. There's a little plot point that Thomas Wayne, because he was a doctor and took the Hippocratic Oath, meaning it doesn't matter who the person is, he has to help them. He basically helps Carmine Falcone back to life. And Bruce Wayne in The Long Halloween is like, why did my father do that? Why didn't he just, like let him go or just just let him die? But I think, and there's definitely more implications of that later in the movie, but that little moment I thought was very nice, especially the line where 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 Falcone is like, "Your father saved my life," and Bruce Wayne was like, "Yeah, it's called the Hippocratic Oath." I'm like, nicely done, Bruce. You get respect points in my book.
I think another twist that really intrigued me throughout this entire movie is the reveal that Thomas Wayne is not as good of a person as what you're supposed to believe, because you have this movie which shows that, yeah, he's the father of Bruce Wayne and he's done some good things, but he's made some pretty vital mistakes along the way, like him using his resources to help fund Falcone and his operations. I'm like, he's not really that great of a person like in previous movies want you to believe he is. I'm like, that is a really interesting touch that makes you think a little bit about, I guess, the Wayne legacy throughout the previous versions of Batman. And I'm like, wow, Matt Reeves, you're really on to something here.
See, this is the part that I was talking about when I was alluding to there was a part that I wish was kind of minimized. This is one of them. I'm not like super overly attached to the character of Thomas Wayne. I mean, we don't really know all that much about him. And I did some research in preparation for this, and in certain storylines, Thomas Wayne was portrayed as more of a stern father figure than others. In some, he was portrayed as a loving father, and in others, he was seen as pretty stern. I get that. I understand that. However, I feel like in this one, the movie was trying to like paint him out as, like you said, is like maybe he's not as good a guy as we made him out to be, which, I mean, would be interesting. But again, I guess I kind of like my Thomas Wayne to be like the guy who's like, why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves back up again. I love that side of him. And Thomas Wayne is someone who, in the Flashpoint paradox, when Bruce Wayne dies in that alley that night, he becomes the Batman. So it just seems like somebody who would give you the shirt off of his back. And so I just don't know if I like this side of Thomas Wayne being secretly like being nice in public, but on the other side is like, oh, he was in bed with Carmine Falcone. I just don't know how I feel about that. I think that could have been minimized, but that's just me.
Yeah, I definitely get where you're coming from. And I think it's all a matter of interpretation of the character and the story, because I like the Thomas Wayne you were talking about in Batman Begins, who encouraged Bruce Wayne to rise out of the darkness. And that paid off incredibly well in The Dark Knight Rises, where he literally climbed out of that prison pit. Fantastic moment. But that twist I thought was intriguing, and I'm really curious to see what direction they're going to take in the subsequent Batman movies. I think I can definitely see where you're coming from. Like, that's a part of the movie where that could have been trimmed out and stuff. But that was one of the aspects that really intrigued me. It was one of them added puzzle pieces to an overall grander mystery that I was really looking forward to see explore. And I hope we get more of the missing pieces with Thomas Wayne and all that in upcoming Batman movies. I feel like the stuff that I was referring to with the extra fat in the runtime where I was dozing off a little bit. Some of the stuff with Catwoman, even though I love Zoe Kravitz in the film, there was a couple of plot points with her that honestly I zoned out of. Like the way the character was introduced and how she presents herself and how she fits within Carmine Falcone and the club that she's in. That opening scene with her and Batman, I did get a little zoned out during that. I'm like, okay, I have no idea where this is going. I'm not gonna lie, I did doze off a little bit during that sequence. So that was probably the part I was referring to, and how it was a movie where the 3 hours I don't think felt fully warranted. But the more we learn more about her character, the more I really like Zoe and her performance. Like the twist that she's Falcone's daughter. I did not see that coming. I thought that was a great reveal, and it really drove her character and made her a more interesting, layered character. And I like that this movie was pretty much Catwoman's origin story, and where her views and where Batman's views come into conflict. Batman starting off with I'm vengeance and then having a little bit of humanity along the way. Catwoman becomes more vengeful as the story goes along because she wants to kill her father for all the wrongs that he's done to her and her mom. And she's this close to actually killing him. And we actually see that anger throughout her performance, and I really, really like that. I just think some aspects with her character at the beginning, I was a little zoned out by, but she got better as the movie went along, and I can't wait to see what the rest of this universe is going to bring.
I think that Zoe Kravitz. Yeah, Zoe Kravitz. In my review, I edited the part out, but in my review, I initially called her Zoe Saldana, which that was.
Oh.
I edited that out, but I realized I'm like, did I really just call her Zoe Saldana? Wow, that was. But
yeah, I've had reviews before, Ryan, where I've called. I think I was reviewing one of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies one time, and I accidentally said Chris Pine instead of Chris Pratt. So it's definitely an easy mistake.
Well, the point I was trying to get at is that I think Zoe Kravitz is the best on-screen Catwoman we've ever seen. No offense to like Eartha Kitt and Michelle Pfeiffer and Anne Hathaway. All of them are good in their own ways. I think overall, this is the best Catwoman we've ever seen. I do hope that Zoe Kravitz makes a return.
Yeah, I don't know if she's my personal favorite Catwoman. I still have a soft spot for Michelle Pfeiffer and Batman Returns. She completely owned that role. But Zoe is definitely up there. For me, it's like a toss-up between her and Anne Hathaway, pretty much.
Yeah, I agree. And I like how throughout the movie she called Batman Vengeance. Like, there was never, like, I don't think anyone really calls the Batman except for the Riddler. Everyone calls him Man or Vengeance or something like that. I thought that was a weird touch, but really the only person who called the Batman was the Riddler, which I think that's as good a place as any to talk about the Riddler, because I don't think we mentioned him at all in the spoiler-free stuff. So I think, minus his outfit, which I thought was just very weird, I think Paul Dano did a great job as the Riddler. What do you think?
One of my favorite things about the whole movie is the Riddler. He's probably top tier elements of this entire movie. And it's crazy to me that we got two completely different versions of the Riddler. We got like the overly campy, jokey Jim Carrey Riddler in Batman Forever. And then years later, Matt Reeves gives us this version of the Riddler, played excellently by Paul Dano, who really got under my skin throughout various portions of the movie. Paul Dano plays this character incredibly well, and I knew he would because he was phenomenal in Prisoners with a similar style of tone with that movie had. And here, he just goes completely all out and playing such a sinister character. he pretty much reminded me of Jigsaw several times throughout the movie because he traps his victims in these different situations and he like quizzes them and tests them with knowledge and they have to get out of it. And if they can't solve the puzzle, they'll be killed. And I'm just like, if this movie had a little bit more gore in it, it's one step closer to being an R-rated Batman movie. It really pushes its PG-13 rating, especially the scene where he captures the DA, straps a bomb around his neck. That sequence had me on edge so much. And it was one of the best, like, adrenaline, tension-filled sequences in the entire movie. A lot of it having to do with how unbelievably scary Paul Dano was as the Riddler.
Yeah, I love his voice when he's like under the mask. He's like, it can be cruel, poetic, or blind. It's like I love that voice of his. And the only time that we see Dano sans like hood, I guess, is at the end, which that interrogation scene, my goodness. There's a part that I wasn't exactly like a fan of. I wasn't on board with. There was one where he was like explaining his part about being an orphan, and he was like, "Oh, but let's remember the rich orphan." And it was like, Bruce Wayne's parents still were killed senselessly. I mean, like you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's all I'm saying. I mean, like rich or not, no one should ever lose their parents. It just seems callous to me. But I thought that whole scene was just handled very well.
Yeah, that sequence I thought was very fantastic. I love Paul Dano's Bruce
Wayne.
Bruce Wayne. And that was so epic of a moment. And then the more the conversation intensifies, and Batman's like, "Wait a minute, what have you done? What have you done? What have you done?"
Great stuff. Great stuff.
That is a great moment on Robert Pattinson's part and Paul Dano's part. I cannot complain about the acting and the dialogue in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess is as good a place as any to parlay into the ending, which basically, I'll just talk about the ending. Basically, Riddler plants bombs around the seawall. Basically, Gotham is oceanfront property now. Pretty much everyone's like living in the Gotham Square Garden, which if you need more proof that this is New York City, there you have it. And basically, and I hope that they do this, it's teasing that they're going to do Batman No Man's Land, which I guess for context's sake, in case you all don't know what that plot line is, No Man's Land is essentially Gotham City pretty much as a no man's land. It operates under martial law. Every Batman villain has his own quadrant, and Batman kind of disappears for a while. Bruce Wayne is at Congress trying to get them to renege on their martial law status. And so then he comes back, and he and Jim Gordon have a bit of a falling out, and it takes time for them to rebuild their relationship. And it's in then and there that Batman actually reveals himself to be Bruce Wayne, and Wayne to Jim Gordon for the first time. I kind of hope that they do that. It was very much implied that they did it in Dark Knight Rises, but I think that was more of a mix of No Man's Land and The Dark Knight Returns and the whole Nightmare storyline, which it was more of an amalgamation. But if they do a full-fledged No Man's Land like storyline, I will love Matt Reeves forever. Because if anyone knows how to do a post-apocalyptic movie, Matt Reeves knows how to do it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any of these comic stories that you keep referring to, but Matt Reeves can do those post-apocalyptic stories. Like look at the Planet of the Apes movies. He did amazing jobs with those movies. And going into the ending, like the ending definitely caught me off guard. Like the whole Gotham flooding out of the ground, I thought was a very surprising touch. And I love the final action set piece where Batman's taking on the Riddler's copycats that they're trying to kill, like the next mayor of Gotham. And Batman is taking them all out. He gets stabbed in the chest pretty brutally. And I have to give Batman respect in this movie. Like, as much as he gets beaten up and nearly stabbed to death, he doesn't give up. Like, he puts some adrenaline down his chest. He jumps back up, beats the crap out of the Riddler copycat, and then the copycat says, "I'm vengeance." And then Batman's like, "Wait a minute. What am I doing? What have I been doing this whole time?" It's like his big turnaround moment. Like, what I respect the most about Pattinson is that there's sequences in the movie where he doesn't have to say a single word, and you know what emotion that he is going through. And so when he hears this guy saying the line, which Batman originally said earlier in the movie when he was taking down all those thugs at the train station, a very brutal opening sequence, which I love, by the way, he has that change of heart. He's like, okay, I got to rethink my strategy because vengeance isn't the way to go in this situation. And so he jumps on like the electrical rope thing, cuts it, and I'm like, he gets electrocuted, falls in the water. I'm like, what the heck is he doing? I don't know what's going on right now. And then the movie did something that I was not expecting to see. He goes up to like the stand thing where there's some civilians that are stranded there, including the new mayor. And so he helps pick up the debris, helps those people out. And there's like this very beautiful wide shot of Batman and a bunch of people walking across the water together. And I'm like, this is probably the first Batman movie where you actually see Batman actually stopping to help people. He's pretty much become almost what you see Superman do on a daily basis. And I'm like, okay, you're actually bringing some humanity into Batman. I'm actually really digging this. I think the only other time that was close to a scene like that was in The Dark Knight Rises, where Batman does the heroic act and he flies his bat plane off of the atomic bomb, flying that off, willing to sacrifice himself to save the entirety of Gotham City. But here we see it on a much more personal level. And I have to respect Matt Reeves for doing a scene like that. It shows a different side of Batman that we haven't really seen explored in previous versions. And I think scenes like that is why I can definitely see why people are like, this is the best Batman movie, because it's exploring the more human side of Batman that I think that they've wanted to see since the beginning. I can't really compare and contrast with those people because I haven't read the comic book, so I'm not going for comic accuracy. I'm just like watching them as their own movies. But I think the ending is what really blew a lot of people's minds and their overall rankings and stuff.
Yeah, and I love throughout the whole movie you see, because the movie opens with the Riddler just brutally murdering the mayor of the city, and you see his son several times throughout, and in that whole scene where Batman's like, "Come with me if you want to live," and he's got the flare and he's doing the whole thing, getting everyone out. The new mayor, Bella Real. You see the son there. That's a very nice plant and payoff. I liked what they did there with that.
Yeah, that moment was absolutely fantastic. And the monologue that Batman gives at the end about being the hope that Gotham needs at that moment, I thought was incredibly touching. It very much satisfied me to where I'm like, it might not be my favorite Batman movie, but it's definitely in my top 5.
Yeah, well, one more thing I did want to point out is that at the very bitter end, we see the Riddler in, we'll just call it, I believe it's Arkham State Hospital, but it's Arkham Asylum. Let's just call it what it is. And see him in Arkham Asylum, and we see that he's got a neighbor. And this neighbor calls himself a clown. And, well, they pretty much don't say it's the Joker, but it's the Joker. And I looked it up afterwards. Guess who that actor is, Jacob?
It's Barry Keoghan or something. Wasn't he in the Eternals recently?
I'm calling him Barry Keoghan. And yes, he was in the Eternals. He's been everywhere. And so I honestly, there's a part of me that was like, oh, well, the Joker's in this. It's going to be, I guess it was inevitable. If this is getting a sequel, you got to introduce Joker into this world. And it's like a natural law that if you do anything Batman related, you got to introduce Joker at some point. We only get to see him in that one scene. So I don't know how I feel about it yet, but I think the possibilities are wide open. However, there is also a part of me that Batman would face off against more villains, because he's got an extensive rogues gallery. He's got Mr. Freeze, and I know Mr. Freeze, only people know him as like the cool party guy, and which definitely not that. But in this universe, if they do like a grounded Mr. Freeze, that could be fantastic. They could. I've heard an idea floating around of Dave Bautista doing Bane, which, I mean, I'm not sure how to feel about that. The man is a lot older than he looks, so I'm not sure how to feel about that. Plus, he's still technically speaking in the MCU, so that might be a bit complicated. I'd love to see someone like a Hugo Strange come in. That would be fun. I'm interested to see what Barry Keoghan does with Joker, if he is in fact the Joker, and they're definitely implying that he is. However, there's a part of me that also wishes that Batman would just face off against other people.
Yeah, this was the one scene in the entire movie that I had mixed emotions on. I think I had heard people comment that this was like, it felt like a studio mandate more than anything else. Like, hey, we got to have the Joker in here somewhere because he's Batman's biggest nemesis. So you got to at least tease him at some point. And I feel like Matt Reeves just kind of felt obligated to do so because it was in the studio notes. I have nothing against Barry Keoghan as an actor. And I'm sure if he gets to expand upon the Joker role, I think he'll probably do a good job. But I feel like since we've had so many great incarnations of the Joker over the years, whether Jack Nicholson or Heath Ledger or Joaquin Phoenix in his standalone Joker movie, I just feel like doing another Joker now, he'll be lost in the shuffle compared to the other fantastic actors who have played the character over the years. And I think it would be more bold, and I think it would be more interesting if Batman faced different villains that people aren't as familiar with in movies going forward. Maybe still tease the Joker in some of these movies, but I think they should hold off on the Joker for a while until people are ready to see a new version of the Joker again. I think having him in Batman 2 as the main villain, I think, is too soon. I'd rather him take on somebody like, I know Matt Reeves has been open to the idea of doing a more grounded version of Mr. Freeze. Considering how well he did Paul Dano as the Riddler in comparison with Jim Carrey, I want to see the serious version of Mr. Freeze and see how he's going to fare and be the much better definitive version of a character that's been mocked at for so many years. There's so many interesting ideas you can do with this sequel, and I don't fully know Batman's rogue gallery. I'm not into the comics, but I know he has a lot of villains, many of which haven't been put on the big screen before. And I'm sure Matt Reeves will think of something to make a very excellent sequel that's worthy of being a great Batman film with so many great villains that you could explore. But save Joker for maybe like if we get to like the Batman 5 or something, save him for that movie, not whatever the sequel's going to be called.
Yeah, I agree. And not to mention that going into the sequel, we've already got some villains baked into the cake. We got Catwoman, though she's off to Bloodhaven, so I don't think she will be back for a while at least. But she might be back, who knows. But you got the Penguin all set up. He was kind of a side player in the Batman, but if they play their cards right, he can potentially be a kind of a more along the lines of a mainline villain. They've got him all set up. The Riddler could come back. It's not like he was killed off screen. Because Gotham is under martial law now, it's only a matter of time before Arkham Asylum just goes completely nuts and the villains are back on the streets again. There are so many possibilities that you could do. We were talking about Mr. Freeze. It's not like it's not like Mr. Freeze is just known for the ice puns and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like Mr. Freeze, if given enough time, is just one of the best Batman villains ever. Watch the Heart of Ice episode from Batman the Animated Series. The monologue where he's like, "This is how I shall remember you, my love, frozen in youth." Like that's, and then ending with, "Revenge is a dish best served cold." It's like, for a children's series, they knocked it out of the park. Like that Heart of Ice episode. Watch it if you haven't. But I hope that they expand the rogues gallery, because it's not like Batman is short on villains. You could do, like I said, Hugo Strange, Clayface. You could do Man-Bat if you really wanted to go bonkersville with it. There's so many possibilities. So I guess to put the period at the end of the sentence, Barry Keoghan could be good as the Joker, but I mean, we just got a Joker standalone movie like 2 years ago, or coming up on 2 years, or 3 years. My bad. I know math, and so it just feels like oh, Batman's here, so we gotta throw the Joker in there, as even if it's just a tease.
Yeah, that sequence definitely left a little bit of a mixed signal in my brain. It was like, yeah, I don't know if it was necessary, but it's intriguing though. I'm curious what's going to come of it. I think I did read Matt Reeves is developing 2 spin-off series in the Batman universe. I don't know if you know this, Ryan, but they're planning on developing a spin-off series starring Colin Farrell as the Penguin. So I think if we're going to get more of him, it's going to be in that series. And I think he's also planning on developing a series centered around Arkham Asylum and kind of doing like a horror style series centered around the characters in Arkham Asylum. And I think there's great potential to be had with both of those series, especially the Penguin. Colin Farrell left such an impressive taste as that character because of how unrecognizable he was. I honestly thought, because of the way he talked, it almost felt like Robert De Niro in a DC movie. And that was incredible. I loved that character. I loved, just how over the top he was while still being a very menacing villain. And I'm excited to see more of this character. And even though he, excuse me, and even though he wasn't in the movie that much, I do think he's a definitive Penguin. I do like Danny DeVito's Penguin, don't get me wrong, even though he's apparently not the comic accurate version of the Penguin where he's like the literal penguin with flippers and he eats fish and bites people's noses and stuff. But it works within Tim Burton's direction, so I love his performance regardless. But I love Colin Farrell's Penguin, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do with him in that series, which I presume is going to be on HBO Max alongside the Arkham series. I just think Matt Reeves has got something going for him in the next few years because I think he is planning on directing Batman 2. And I don't know if he's going to direct episodes of the spinoff series, but I think he's going to have a hand with them, much like what James Gunn did with the Peacemaker series, the spinoff of the Suicide Squad. And I think if he plays his cards right, he's going to have an amazing in-universe of amazing Batman content in years going forward.
I agree. And so I guess final thoughts, Jacob. I think, like I said, I think this movie has been definitely overhyped. I went into there and it was just like the reviews were so overwhelmingly good that seeing like negative reviews, I was like, wow, like that they were genuine outliers. And I think, I guess to address some of them, I guess some of the criticisms were that I guess it boiled down to it was too dark and it did not feel like Batman, which that latter point, I mean, come on. Batman is such a versatile character. You could go super light with him, say like Lego Batman movie, for example, or you could go super dark with him, say something like this or the Dark Knight trilogy. You can go either way with him and or maybe something in the middle, and as long as you do it right, it's going to work. And I've also seen some others saying like, oh, it's not comic accurate. It's almost a shame to be associated with comic books. I've read some incredibly dark comic books in my life, especially in Batman. Read the Batman run by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo about the Court of Owls and thank me later. That's some of the darkest Batman material you will ever read. And one of the most popular Batman stories is The Dark Knight Returns, which confronts themes about age, about a changing world, about Superman and how he's seemingly at the beck and call of the US government, and just it's a whole big thing. It just I've read some incredibly mature and dark comics, and I've also read some very light and over the top comics. It's just a medium, and as long as there's quality there, it really doesn't matter. Like I don't think the Batman is as much ashamed of being a comic. It's just it feels like it's trying to elevate it, if that makes any sense at all. I think if you can boil it down to anything, the Batman is kind of like if David Fincher directed a Batman movie. If the Batman from Matt Reeves borrows from anything, it only borrows from the best and combines so many influences that in turn it becomes its own thing. Kind of like the Star Wars rule, if you will.
Yeah, I can't compare between the comics as I've already mentioned, but some of the negative criticism, I actually feel like a lot of it is based on people's expectations and their preferences for Batman in general. Like some people who complain that the Batman is too dark are probably those who prefer like Adam West or some of the Joel Schumacher Batman films. And I think some only review bombed it over jealousy because they love Ben Affleck's Batman and they love the Snyderverse and they think, oh, this new Batman movie took Ben Affleck out of the bat suit and he got robbed of being in his own Batman movie. And I feel like a lot of it is over jealousy. There's definitely some interesting opinions that I've seen online. Uh, some of which I'm like, I guess, kind of see where you're coming from. Others I'm like, I don't know if I can take you seriously at all. It's just interesting seeing people's receptions on this movie. I think some of the hype is a little overhyped, like best comic book movie of all time. I can't agree with that. I don't think it's the best Batman movie, but it is a great movie. And it's currently my favorite movie of the year so far, if that says anything. I think this is easily the movie that it's going to be in the competition for best movie of the year until, I don't know, maybe when Doctor Strange 2 comes out. I think that's a stiff competition at the moment. We'll see about some of these other smaller films that'll come in between and near the end of the year during Oscar season. There's definitely, it's a great movie. I can't wait to see it again. I don't think I'm going to rewatch it as much as the Dark Knight trilogy, but I still highly, highly respect this movie. And if I had to rank my top 4 Batman movies, Dark Knight trilogy would be in my top 3, the Batman number 4. So that's pretty much close behind the Amazing Dark Knight trilogy for me.
Yeah, and this is not to discount the opinions of those who didn't like the Batman. I'm not saying that at all. That's just their opinion. I've read some really insane Batman reviews like in the past couple of days. And like say, for example, my friend Rachel over Rachel's Reviews, she was not a humongous fan of it. And I can't exactly say that she was wrong about it. She actually brought up some pretty salient points about it. But then there are others, they're just like, oh, the movie's too boring. It's too dark. You can barely see anything, which I disagree with that last part. I think the cinematography was really good. But like I said, I'm not trying to say that if you don't like this, you're like a bad fan. That is not what I'm trying to say. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are going to be those who don't like it for just really weird reasons, and I guess that's what it boils down to, I guess.
Yeah, that is a weird criticism you bring up that somebody brought up. It's too dark, you can't see anything. That was some of the best cinematography I had ever seen a Batman movie. Like the upside down shot of Batman walking to confront the Penguin after that explosive chase. That gave me goosebumps. And then there was the scene where I think it was near the end when Batman was about to confront Falcone with Catwoman, and there's this scene where like the lights go completely dark, and you see and you hear guns firing at Batman, and all you see is the guns ricocheting off of Batman's suit, and every other frame you just see Batman go boom, boom, while the guns are ricocheting back and forth. And I'm like, Matt Reeves crafted some really unique shots that I'm not gonna forget about for a long, long time.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I definitely agree with you. This is my favorite movie of the year so far. My top three are The Batman, Kimmy, the HBO Max exclusive from Steven Soderbergh, and strangely enough, Jackass Forever. Those are my top three.
That's
So
a wild top three right
I
there.
know, I know. I was thinking about it earlier, and I'm like, all right, I've only seen these many movies, and Batman, Kimmy, and and Jackass Forever are in my top three. It's gonna
Yeah,
rapidly change as the year goes on.
yeah.
I have a feeling of that, but I've got to see Fresh coming up on Hulu, Turning Red's coming up, which, oh boy, I cannot wait to review that one and just.
Yeah, I've already seen some of the reviews on that movie. I'm like, is it going to be that good of a movie? Because it's got like a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. But some people are like, is this movie actually for kids or not? Because it's dealing with like teenage girl problems and puberty and stuff.
And then we got the Adam Project coming out on Netflix, which like I said, I loved that trailer. So it's going to be wild. I suspect the rest of this year is going to be it's going to be interesting to see where the Batman eventually lies on our top of the year list, if it even makes it on there at all. Who really knows? But I think that is all for us. What did you all think of the Batman? Did you like it, dislike it, think it's just okay? All opinions are welcome here. Leave them in the comments. We would love to read what you all have to say. And I want to give a shout out really quick to Aaron White. He's a subscriber to the to this personal channel. He's honestly one of my favorite subscribers. He comments on most of the videos, and he just like posts entire essays. And I'm like, I see the comment, I'm like, dang, Aaron, he loves to make me read, doesn't he? But I'm not complaining. It's awesome how he's so granular about them, and just please keep him coming. But I love what he said last week, and so I love reading comments about just random stuff from all of you. So all comments are welcome. Leave them below. And Jacob, where can people find you? And actually, what's because we dedicated so much time to the Batman, what's going on your channels?
Going on my channels, pretty much my usual stuff with movie reviews. I haven't posted a review of the Batman just yet. I'm going to save that for my cinema roundup video at the end of March, where I'm doing all the movies that I watch in theaters and various streaming services throughout the month. But some videos that have recently dropped on my channel. My recent Celebrating Disney review was on the Disney sports film Million Dollar Arm. Most recently, I did a Superhero Saturdays video on The Dark Knight, which dropped literally the night that I watched the Batman in theater. So that was timed very well. This past Sunday, I just did a review of an Alfred Hitchcock film called Murder, released in 1930, a very early Alfred Hitchcock film, and one that's a step in the right direction, considering the last couple Hitchcock films were very bizarre movies. Video that just recently dropped on my channel the night we're recording this is for a Richard Donner fantasy film called Lady Hawk, which stars Matthew Broderick and Rutger Hauer. A very odd combo right there. Not a fan of Broderick in this movie. I felt like he was miscast, but it's definitely an interesting movie worth talking about. I have a review for The Matrix Revolutions coming up, continuing in my series of Wachowski reviews. Very infamous movie, very divisive film for sure, but it's definitely a little bit overhated, and there's aspects in it that I can defend. I got a vlog video coming on my channel where my sister will react to The Adjustment Bureau, criminally underrated movie. I've seen the film twice now, and I cannot recommend it enough. I
Yeah.
got a collab video coming with my buddy Dave from his YouTube channel, Interpreting the Stars, where we're wrapping up the Pink Panther franchise with the Pink Panther 2, starring Steve Martin. And then I have my second channel, Storytime with Jacob, where I do book reviews and read-alongs. I have just finished rereading To Kill a Mockingbird, which is a fantastic book. I can't recommend it enough. Book review should be coming on the channel real soon. I'm about to review a book written by one of my close friends on the YouTube space, Michael Zara, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He has a YouTube channel called Did You See That? And he wrote a book. I'm going to plug it real quick. He wrote a book a few years ago called Suicide Rumor. And this is the book I'll be diving next on my second channel. And I'm excited to read this and review it and share my thoughts. It's crazy that one of my closest friends on the YouTube space has written a book, which you can purchase on Amazon. I think that's pretty neat. So that's all for me. And of course, you can also follow me on Letterboxd, Twitter, and Facebook.
That all sounds awesome. I will link both of Jacob's channels and his social media in the description of this video. Do definitely go check him out. And as far as this channel goes, I will be having videos up for Unbreakable, which I think is a movie that is better than people remember.
Nice.
And I will having my first reaction up for Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream, which really just distressed me. Like, I don't know how many of you have seen the movie, but wow, oh my goodness, is one of the most distressingly beautiful movies that I've ever seen. It's very well made, but I don't think I can ever watch it again. So that review will be dropping very soon. I'll have a Twilight Zone review up for the episode called Nick of Time. It was the debut of William Shatner to the series, and of course, we all know William Shatner from Star Trek, and of course from the Twilight Zone, the Murder from 10,000 Feet episode. But he was in another one called Nick of Time, which I will be talking about at that time. So that's all coming to the channel very soon. And thank you all so much, as always, for watching. Please be sure to stay tuned for Life in the Movies. It drops every Wednesday, so be on the lookout for that. That's Jacob Martin. My name is Ryan Cam. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care.